Today, the church asks us to reflect on what does it take to move a good person to be a great person, or a good Christian to be a great Christian. What ignites the soul to make that leap, to break through to a new level of living with God? We just read one of the great Gospels in this regard. The rich man, by all accounts, a very, very good man. He kept all the commandments. And there was something in him that longed for something more. He runs up to Jesus and asks the question that if I saw Jesus, I would ask Jesus myself. What do I have to do to gain eternal life? Right? That would probably be pretty high on our list of important questions to ask Jesus if we met him. And Jesus tells him, well, follow the rule. Follow the commandments. He said, I've done all that, but what else? And Jesus says, just one more thing. Just one more thing. And that's the rub. That's the friction. Go. Sell everything. Give it to the poor. Then come and follow me. And then one of the saddest lines in the Gospels. His face fell. And he went away sad because he had many things. We know the story very, very well. Ronald Rolheiser, the theologian and spiritual writer, tells this story when reflecting on this gospel. He says, there was a young monk who one day goes up to the master monk and says, Master, I am doing everything well. I am very disciplined. I am mortified. I pray day and night. I have mastered my emotions. And he says, Master, tell me, what else? What else do I have to do? And the master says, now become fire. Turn yourself to fire. Father Pieper has asked me to preach on Elizabeth Ann Seton today. And here's the question for all of us, and this is a question that she had to ask herself. Where in your life is the rub, the friction, that will enkindle us, or her, to become fire? Surprisingly, becoming fire, becoming inflamed with God's love and passion isn't something that necessarily just drops from the sky, but often it comes from our suffering. When we say, that's the rub, that's the tension, that's the friction, that's the stress in my life. All those things cause a spark, right? Friction enkindles, sparks. In what direction we go, it can either burn us out or bring us to a breakthrough moment of handing ourselves over to the Lord. So let's look at the life of Elizabeth Ann Seton. She was born in 1774 to a prominent New York family. Now, 1774, we know here in Philadelphia, is 2 years before 1776, right? And so we know some of the things that she probably lived through. But by all accounts, those things didn't necessarily overly affect her. What affected her a lot was that she lost her mother at 3 years old. And then she was given over to family members to take care of her, and then her father remarried, and she became attached to her stepmother. And then, unfortunately, her parents separated. And she said it was like losing a second mother. She married at 19 to a wealthy businessman who was in shipping. And by all accounts, they had a very happy marriage. They had 5 children. But then, because of political reasons between England, the United States, and France, their shipping business fell onto bad times, and they declared bankruptcy. At one point, they had a very beautiful house on Wall Street, downtown New York, which at that time was the center of New York, and they had to sell the house and move in with relatives. During that time, William Seton, her husband, got very sick with tuberculosis. The doctor said it's best to go to Italy, and he had a business acquaintance or friend in Italy, Filippo Felici, and so we went. The whole family went to Italy so that he could get a better environment for his tuberculosis. He was left in quarantine for a month, and shortly afterwards, he died in 1803, leaving Elizabeth Ann Seton a widow with 5 children at the age of 29. While in Italy, Elizabeth had the opportunity for the first time in her life to be exposed to the Catholic culture and the Catholic faith. And she fell in love with the church. Among the many things she loved, one in particular really drew her, and that was the real presence in the Holy Eucharist. And she believed that it was only through the Catholic Church that she'd be able to be one or receive Jesus in her life through the Eucharist. And it became a burning passion. Notice the word, burning passion. To receive the Lord in the Eucharist, to be a member of the church. But here's the rub. Her families, both sides of the family, were able to sustain her and her children if she remained a good Episcopalian. And she was a good Episcopalian. But she knew that if she became a Catholic, she would be rejected and abandoned by her family. Now, you know that's a very important or a very painful wound in her life already, abandonment and rejection. So the stress in her life is, do I leave it all behind? Take the risk, 5 children, go back to New York, and become a Catholic, and lived abandoned to God's divine providence? Or do I play it safe and live out a good life? We know in 1805, she took the profession of faith and became a Catholic. And painfully, she was shunned by her family. But she became fire. She founded the first religious community in the United States under the rule of St. Vincent de Paul and Louise de Marillac, and the Daughters of Charity later on. She had the first free Catholic school in the United States, And through her handing over of self, her passionate, burning desire, how many children were taught in Catholic schools in the United States? How many children were treated in orphanages and hospitals? How much good was done through her passion and love? For us, it strikes me that none of us are alien to suffering, right? We all have rubs, we all have tensions, we all have fears. We can avoid them, run from them, or we can allow them to ignite us, to become fire, to become passionate for the gospel. It seems to me that all of us can identify with the rich young man. Imagine what he could have done in his life. He could have been one of the great apostles. No one knows his name. But he went away sad. It's not good enough to be good. To be Christian, we have to let go. Let the passion take over, ignite us. But what that means is we have to embrace the suffering of our choices and of our lives. So today, the church invites us to become fire.